Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's AAMA Member Connect. We will be starting in a few minutes as we're waiting for some folks to join the meeting. So just stand by for a minute or two, give some folks to get on in, and we'll get this thing started. Well, everyone's time's valuable, so let's just go ahead. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's AAMA Member Connect webinar. Pre-pandemic, I doubt many of you spent a lot of time worrying about the global supply chain. You ordered things from your international suppliers, which were loaded into a container, and a month later showed up at your warehouse. My, oh my, how times have changed. Today, your need for timely information about the state of the supply chain has never been greater. Mistakes can lead to delays or much higher costs that can literally shut a business down. This AAMA Member Connect webinar is titled Navigating the Turbulence in Global Trade, Building Resilience in Manufacturing Supply Chains Using Data, AI, and Digital Tools. As trade tensions mount, supply chains shift, and new technologies disrupt global commerce, the rules of international trade are being rewritten, and fast. Claudine Ogilvie, an Australian tech leader, board director, and supply chain innovator, joins us to unpack how these global changes are hitting decision makers across borders and what professionals, operators, and emerging leaders in manufacturing supply chains need to know now to stay resilient. In this session, Claudine will share insight, including understanding the implications of recent tariff implementations and trade agreements, building resilient supply chain strategies for companies to adapt to and thrive amid ongoing disruptions, how to leverage data and technology to provide agility and visibility in supply chain management, and even provide a competitive advantage. Show us ways to identify and mitigate risks in an increasingly volatile global market. Please share any questions you have in the chat box, and we'll get to as many as we can during this webinar. And this webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending you a link to it at its conclusion. And with that, I'm going to hand this presentation over to Claudine. Claudine, take it away.
Thanks, Pete. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I was actually with the AAMA last week in Washington, D.C., advocating for manufacturing competitiveness and resilience on the Hill. And I got to hear firsthand a lot of the stories and of the AAMA membership and how tariffs and really tough and volatile economic conditions were impacting American manufacturers. So that was an amazing trip, and I think for me certainly a fabulous experience to really get into the nuts and bolts of these issues, specifically also for the AAMA. And I know you've had previous presenters here present on tariffs, so I won't necessarily go into the details of tariffs and how they work and where we've come from, but context is still really important. And so I will sort of take a step back and have a look at the bigger picture here. Tariffs are not new, and supply chains are very much global, and they have been, the economy and trade has been very much a global and increasingly global supply chains over the last many decades. And these have created centers of economic efficiency. And these are really important because various countries are really sort of battling it out to become centers of efficiencies for various products or parts of the economy. I mean, examples of this is you have semiconductors in Taiwan, even Bangladesh with footwear. But in America, you've got Silicon Valley for tech innovation, and of course, Ford vehicle manufacturing out of Detroit. So they exist everywhere, and you can see where I think the intent has come in terms of building up tariffs of the current administration. However, there has been enormous volatility around how this has gone on, and this has been really challenging for manufacturers to react, but more importantly, to be able to manage these moving forward and plan for this moving forward. Lay it on top of tariffs and tariff volatility as it comes and goes, and hopefully, you know, the administration takes a more strategic approach to this, so that, you know, we can revive advanced manufacturing, or certainly augment advanced manufacturing in the US. You also have an overlay of regulatory trends out there, that you might be importing or exporting to the EU, and you need to deal with the EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism, or sustainability reporting. You may also have to deal with safety regulation, various other industry certifications, and provenance and traceability for the purpose of quality or even recall. So there's a lot on for manufacturers in the US, and this is something that a lot of these, I think, barriers or challenges are increasingly being weaponized, and they require rapid adaptation in sourcing, in pricing, and supply chains shouldn't shouldn't just react, but actually need to start to preempt some of these changes. There are plenty of things that manufacturers can do to better prepare themselves and to build out that resilience that they need to adapt quickly and smart. And I think traditionally, a lot of the tactics were around buffering with inventory. So, you know, building that out, which is kind of expensive, or creating redundant supply chains, which is expensive and slow. However, we are seeing a shift right now towards having companies being able to build visibility, traceability, automation in every product and component, which means that you can then understand where everything's coming from, what alternatives are available, but then also building up an understanding of where do you need to protect and augment your data integrity, because all these insights, you know, knowing what to do comes from data and your insights. So where across those supply chain partners do you need to build that out, and that'll give you that capability to adapt, not just quickly but also successfully. And it's very true that today digital supply chains don't just move faster, they learn faster. It means you can really take on those learnings as you go across that journey, pivot faster than your competitors. So if you're going to build all this out, technology is really going to be there to help you get there. Otherwise, it's pretty heavy and manual. The ability to do all these things, you know, most supply chains run on Excel spreadsheets and across companies, that is, and emails and attachments, and you know, the ability to digitize internally and across partners makes an enormous difference. And you've got McKinsey out there who've done a lot of work on this space, and they have some fabulous data around next generation supply chains and what it means to business. Their product launches are 30% faster to market and 23% more profitable. Next gen supply chains also mean you'll have better customer satisfaction. If you have a better service, you can pivot faster, you can get product to them more quickly and with more clarity, you're going to get better customer satisfaction. You can also start to, you know, lean into more strategic collaboration rather than on the day-to-day logistics. And then finally, you also get companies that are 6 times more likely to improve engineering efficiency by more than 30%. So this is cost out in many ways, and the ability to do more with less. And so in an organization or even an industry where margins are really tight, this can make all the difference. This is huge. And so digital transformation is pretty critical to being and remaining competitive, but it's not easy. Digital transformation is tough. And essentially, if I were to break it down, only 20% of digital transformation is about the technology. It's 20% tech, 30% processes and systems, and 50% people, transformation, reskilling. That's huge, and that's a major shift for any organization. And this is why, you know, not all organizations do it easily. And even when an organization sits back and go, yes, we're going to do this, we're going to transform, comments that you often hear are, well, we now need perfect data, or our data is just not mature enough to digitally transform and move in that direction yet, or we need to wait for a more mature use case or a better use case to pop up before we can really lean into this. Or finally, we'll run a pilot, we'll do something small, and then maybe next quarter we'll decide on what we want to do. Hang on, there we go. So really what this means is, in an AI first world, perfection will kill momentum. And in all honesty, you don't need perfection to make significant strides forward. And that's all you need to do compared to your competitors. So where organizations out there, manufacturers, tend to stall, and this is where we can all learn from each other, is waiting for that clarity instead of creating it for yourself. Things are moving so fast. It can be really hard to know what the perfect way forward looks like. Tariffs are sometimes changing every day. So, you may not get that clarity, but there are things you can do to move forward, to create the clarity, to create test cases, test it, create the data for yourself. Some organizations may treat AI or digitization like a tech project. It's kind of CIO or the tech leaders problem in many ways, but really it's a top-down leadership shift. I think digitization needs to be business-led, and it is absolutely, the business, the CEOs, the business GMs who need to be accountable for those outcomes. And the CIO or the tech leader will continue to lead in the tech lead that is required to get there, but they're not the ones who are going to decide whether or not it was successful. And then finally, and I think AI has a big part to play in this particular shift, is this, we need to go from trying to control the process to being really clear on the direction. And some of this has to do with strategy. Being really clear on what is our strategy, where are we going, what is it, what are we trying to achieve? And then how you get there almost doesn't matter. With so much volatility and things are constantly shifting, you need to have a business that's truly agile and can shift with the changing environment. But if you're really clear on what that outcome is, what is the direction, you're definitely going to get there in the end. And then finally, relying on consultants, suppliers, and vendors. You can absolutely do that to accelerate the journey, but it can't be the only thing that you do. In parallel, successful companies build internal capability. So by all means, bring on vendors, bring on consultants, but it can't be a delegated change and transformation. You need to bring your people on the journey, and that might slow things down. But that's okay, and that's how it's going to be sustainable. This need to continuously upskill your people is just needs to be part of the DNA in this day and age. It's never going to be set and forget. It's never going to be a case of these are the specific skills that we need right now. You're going to have to constantly review and revise that. So all in all, what this means to me is very much around supply chains need to be sticky. Like, you need a good direction. He's sticky in the right direction, but it also needs to be fluid. You need to be able to move it around but it always to flow sort of in the right direction. You need to assess with data. So what's the situation? How's it shifting? Test and learn. So create that certainty for yourself. Understand what it means specifically for your business. And it may not be the same as a competitor or a different industry. And always scale. A lot of organizations will do the testing, will do a pilot, but you need to do it with the intent up front to scale, because that's where you get the real business benefits. That's when you truly transform. If you don't get to that point, it's almost pointless. I mean, you really need to get to that point, and that means often budgeting for that and intending that up front. So, adaptability is constant. Upskilling is, it needs to be a constant. And then finally, of course, we touched on strategy first, but also customers first. What does all this mean for your customers? And asking yourself, how will this impact them? And technology might inform and even reshape your strategy, but it's still headed in that same direction, that strategic direction, and you need to know what it means for your customers. So all of this is in in an environment of increasing increasing risk and volatility, as we sort of touched on up front. And I'm very passionate about the fact that the modern risk management function is very much a data discipline. It's not just a crisis function. This is something that will enable your growth, enable your strategy, if it's just embedded and ingrained in everything that you do. So this is it's a way of working in many ways. And what does that mean? It means mapping your ecosystem beyond your tier one. I think many companies don't have a clear and dynamic view of their supply chains. It's static systems. Sometimes it's in Excel spreadsheets, and it's really hard to understand what it means beyond tier one, or even what tier one even looks like. Um, Needs to stay informed and monitor disruptions. As we touched on, tariffs are changing sometimes every day, and regulatory requirements are changing pretty regularly. So staying on top of that can be a challenge, but definitely there are some fabulous digital tools out there that help you do that. And be prepared, be ready. Build the mitigating tools, the frameworks, the capabilities to help you do all this, because there's a lot, but there's plenty out there to help automate, to help you do your risk mapping, to help you with supplier collaboration and that connectivity piece, to help you transform and uplift your data integrity and governance. In particular, there's a big shift that needs to happen around how data is treated in an organization. It's not just an enabler anymore. It really is an asset, and that needs to change how it's viewed and how companies invest and own their data in different ways. So when we sort of think about what does this all mean, beyond the risk, there's a lot to be gained in terms of competitive advantage. All these things. You can be viewed as a risk, but also if you start investing in your risk management, in digital and data transformation, this can genuinely be an important source of competitiveness in these really challenging environments. It's the companies that put one foot in front of the other and persistently and consistently sort of move forward. They're the ones who are actually going to pull ahead. It's important we're not paralyzed by the enormity of the changes that are going on right now. So easily to be overwhelmed with it. But just one step and foot in front of the other, and it'd be amazing how far you go just with that. There's around this whole digital and data transformation, these are the sorts of things that are going to give you or reduce your costs, because if you reduce your costs, you're going to have more capital to do some of the more value-adding competitiveness pieces that are and operationalizing your business in competitive ways that's so critical to our business in remaining sustainable into the future. And then, if you can start building out, bit by bit your data ecosystems, not just within your company, but getting that visibility beyond your company, you're going to start building that ability to make much better decisions much faster, which is kind of exciting. This building insights, visibility, and flexibility using your supply chain data. And collaborating with your partners. There's this whole building out of relationships with your partners that I think, because we're so busy, head down, fixing problems, putting fires out, trying to survive the next tariff announcement, or even just competitive and economic pressures out there, that sometimes we forget the power of relationships. And if you can build those out quietly in the background, or make it easier, just make it really easy to do business with your partners, that in itself can be a competitive edge. We touched on this earlier, but starting small is okay. The idea of one foot in front of the other is absolutely fine. In fact, that'll get you further than most other organizations. But always intend to scale. Start with that intention to scale, because it will change the way that you do your pilots. It'll change the way you assess using your data, and then test, learn, pivot, scale. That needs to be a new modus operandi for, if it's not already, for a lot of businesses. Now, sort of finishing out on people. People are still the business. And I'm a techie, and I don't think, people are going anywhere. There's a lot of hype at the moment. AI is taking your jobs. I think they're taking roles, if you want, at the moment, and a lot of roles need to completely change and transform. And I think that's the bigger question: how are they transforming? What are the new roles going to look like? And I think there's the transition period won't be easy. But I think a lot of talk about low level entry level roles disappearing. That sounds like a really nice short term cost cutting exercise, and a lot of companies are engaging in that right now. But then that middle manager, senior manager roles are becoming increasingly important to help with AI, to put that governance and judgment overlay over AI, to validate your data, to validate the outcomes, to even help shape how AI works in the business. Um, and then what happens when they move on? You're still going to need a talent pipeline out there. You're still going to need people working their way up the company. So I would argue people need to start asking themselves, what are the skills and talents and company-specific IP that you want to build out in your organization? And what do those entry-level roles now look like? And it's probably not paper pushing. It could be that, these are probably going to be young professionals who are very tech savvy, who might even start building out some of these data algorithms and AI modules for you. There are a lot of ways that I think those roles will start to, that they will just look different. And I think every business is going to have to work out, what does that look like for me? But they can't disappear, because then you don't have middle management, and then you don't have, etc. So at the heart of all of this, data, 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 and this is why we founded HivePix. I'm extremely passionate about the competitiveness and resilience in the supply chain, as you know, and those of you who met me last week will know. And HivePix is all about democratizing these capabilities across very large and small organizations. And thanks to progress in technologies and AI, it's now accessible with businesses who have very good, and I'm going to say evolving data maturity, and that's okay. You've got to start somewhere, and HivePix provides the tools to help with supply chain visibility, traceability. Fundamentally, we're connecting product data, and if products are the side of your business, and usually as manufacturers they are, then we're connecting product data from your suppliers and then to your customers. So automating all those processes. They used to be manual and paper pushing with Excel and emails and various platforms, because the attachments are so huge. So you can focus on collaborating and much more important things. You can focus on building out your data ecosystems. There's a platform, HivePix is a platform that allows you to do that. And it gives you the opportunity to really get the data you need beyond the scope of your company to start making better decisions, because supply chains are global, because supply chains are external to you. You need to get that data somehow in a much easier fashion. So this, this is why we exist. And I think I love Peter Drucker's quote here: in the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not actually the turbulence itself, it's acting with yesterday's logic. And there are plenty of ways, systems and tools to help you manage that, because there is a lot to it, but it doesn't have to be outrageously hard. You just need to sort of take one step at a time. Leverage your internal IP and deep expertise and knowledge, and then point it in the right direction.
Excellent
Thanks,
stuff,
Pete.
Claudine. Thank you very, very much. That was a very excellent presentation. Folks, if you got any questions, please put them either in the Q&A or the chat box. Claudine, our industry is predominantly small manufacturers, suppliers. I think it's a handful that exceed 50 million a year. What would, in your experience in working with organizations on that scale, what kind of cost savings are we talking about? I mean, how much of an impact can this uh, getting smart about your supply chain have on those businesses?
Yeah, look, it depends on your use case, and I think every business is a little bit different. But I can give you a few examples. So, we have a business, a manufacturer of a consumer product that then on sells to various retailers, and they ship in containers and pallets of a steel component. And they were in the situation where they were that one of those pallets were defective fairly consistently, and their systems just weren't talking to each other. They didn't have the data maturity to actually understand where it was coming from. It sounds basic, but it's a common issue. It's quite a simple issue, you'd think, but actually it was complex enough that they just couldn't work it out. It was costing their business hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And because the minute one of those pallets were defective, they had a policy that for safety reasons, they had to get rid of the entire pallet.
Wow.
Yeah. And so HivePix, we've been able to sort of build out the visibility across their supplier network. So now all that supplier data weren't going into what was a split of systems and Excel spreadsheets. Now they had full visibility across the board, what products were coming from where, and also into what parts of their business. It gave them clarity and visibility across their supply chain. And separately to that use case, they are now able to also better understand what products are coming from where. And so they were able to broker better deals with some of their suppliers as a consequence as well, because they suddenly realized we're kind of getting the same thing from two different suppliers where we can consolidate this, and we probably need more resilience in that part of our supply chain. So we started off with a simple use case, just visibility for the sake of defective products and saving. It was a cost saving, but in the end, they've now also extended that out to a whole bunch of other benefits. Another example that we have is we have a customer on who their regulatory requirements are being pushed down the supply chain to them from their customers. So the customers are going, oh, we need all these certifications and you need to provide that to us so that we can provide it to our customers, kind of thing. And they were like, this is just overwhelming, because each of my customers are asking me for this regulatory information, but it's all in different ways, shapes and forms, and everyone wants it differently and slightly different reports. So what we've done is we've gone in and programmed an understanding of, I think it was, we started with 10 clients. This client wants it in this way, and this specific information and these specific attachments, etc., for every single client. And then, and now when we get an invoice from that client, that's the trigger into the system. It just automatically, it's integrated into their ERP system. It automatically just pushes the information that they've already decided that that's what they need and how they need it to those clients. They don't have to sit there copy pasting and reshaping and redoing all that information every time. And they actually reckon they'd had 2 full-time people mostly doing that
Wow.
for all of their clients. So we started with 10 and now we're looking to expand it much further. So very different use cases on different sides of the supply chain, but start small, start simple, get a use case that, part of your business where manual, lack of visibility or that's costing a lot of manual effort. And then you can sort of take it from there. and then extend it out. And sometimes just that visibility alone, like the example of the company that was doing it for defective products now, has found better sourcing deals. So the visibility. So sometimes you don't know what you don't know till you see it, kind of thing.
Yeah. You talked about starting small, and
Yes.
let me start with this question. For any company, I'm gonna make a statement. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. For any
Yeah.
company that is reliant on an international supply chain to get products
Yeah.
into the country or ship products out of the country, products and parts, does it make sense to go through this process of bringing AI into your supply chain management?
So yeah. So if you're sourcing internationally, let's say you've got five, you're sourcing, you've got half a dozen suppliers or manufacturers out of China. Maybe you've got some others coming out of South America. Maybe you've got a couple in Europe. Um, this helps us simplify that enormously. So beyond the transaction itself, there are already lots of technologies and platforms that digitize that already. Beyond the transaction, you need to exchange product data. So that's where we are. So in a sense, um, we're a narrow and yet massive gap in that supply chain digitization. You need to provide the details and the data that are relating to that product. So at the moment, you would be getting Excel spreadsheets, and maybe even actually I've heard, from social media platforms, even they use that to exchange product data. So it's coming from all sorts of sources around the world. If you just if it, The way it would work is you go onto HivePix, you go, okay, you invite them all to provide their product data to you via the platform. So in a sense, instead of uploading everything or attaching everything to an Excel spreadsheet, they upload everything onto HivePix. And at that point, you know, you would receive all of that in I'm going to say, a unified fashion. Uh, so in a sense, it unifies all of that for you as the customer, but for them as well, it's a win-win platform. So it's not just them doing this for you. It's like they'll hop onto HivePix and they go, okay, great, I get to automate my product data to Pete, great. But actually, now that all my product data is in the HivePix, I can also automate that to all of my other customers as well. And this is how you build out ecosystems. This is how you start collaborating with your suppliers and saying, look, if we're all on HivePix, and then you can then use HivePix to exactly the same thing with your suppliers, then all of a sudden, like over time, it won't happen overnight, but you start to get a couple of layers of into your supply chain. And as products are sold along that supply chain, without any effort, you have that traceability element. You can report on, layers product data. So, oh, actually, at this stage in the supply chain, this happened. At this stage, then it was transformed, and now this is the product data. This is not competitively um, sensitive data. This is a product that I've sold to you, and here are the specs. Here are the materials. This is where the materials have come from. Sometimes that's really important, and you need to
Yeah.
report on that. And the problem with reporting on provenance often is you have to go back several layers in the supply chain and get all that paperwork, right? But if at each stage of that supply chain, everyone's just layering on their bits of information, nobody has to sit there and try and collect the whole thing, right? It's
Yeah.
just there. And it sounds simple, but because it is in some ways. And so you get to the end there, and you just start quietly building out these ecosystems. And all you've done is connected that's your supply chain, and you've started to augment that data as well. So yeah, in a sense, it's a very simple process that has a lot of great benefits once you start building it out.
Yeah, so what way you're describing it to me is it's taking siloed components of that whole process of getting the product from China all the way to the United States and connecting those silos together. So the
Yes.
manufacturer got his suppliers, they'll be speaking to this system and so on and so forth, all the way through to the transit from China over to the United States.
Yeah. So yeah, spot on. And it doesn't matter how big or small your organization is, right? And that's part of the secret. So you touched on the fact that a lot of the AAMA members are small to medium-sized
Yeah.
organizations. So part of the secret sauce is that it's easy to use. Anyone with an Excel spreadsheet can upload product data onto HivePix, right? If you have, there's an open API and connectors and things like that, so you can just connect up your systems. And if you're a very large organization, which I have a lot of experience in that side as well, we have all the sophistication to help you connect in your very complex and customized ERP systems and cybersecurity systems and single sign-on and all that jazz. Also works in HivePix, but it's not something, it's sort of horses for courses in HivePix, and it has to be, because that's how you capture an ecosystem. It's not, it has to be really easy, but also sophisticated enough to handle complex requests. But you don't have to do that, right?
Yeah.
And then even small to medium organizations can start to use HivePix to do things like AI. I mean, I think I would imagine a lot of people on this webinar will have hopped on to ChatGPT and various other LLMs and how to go. If you haven't, please have a go. But one of the things it's really good at is generating content. So what you could do is you can go, right now I've got, and this is a real use case, I've got 3 people, part-time. We've got all this product data, and I've got to create marketing descriptors so that I can put all of these up on my website, B2B and B2C. And they're sitting there writing little marketing descriptors for each and every one of these hundreds of products. Whereas all this product data, the specs, the color, the sizing, you name it, is already in HivePix. And when you have a specific data source like that already pre-exists, it is really accurate. You can say, HivePix, I'd like you to create a product description for this particular product data. This is my audience. This is what I want to see. It has to be 2-3 lines long because it has to fit this format. AI is really good at that, really, really good
Yeah.
at that. So you can say, do this for my 200 products, 2,000 products, it doesn't matter. And it will just produce it for you. And then I'd like to think you do need to validate it. As I
Yeah.
said
Yeah.
before, I'm
Yeah.
a huge believer in human in the loop always. But I tell you what, you'll go from 3 people to 1, with the grunt work pretty quickly, right? And then you can start focusing on more strategic stuff, right?
Yeah.
As an example.
You,
And
you talked, well, I don't mean to cut you off. What I was going to ask is
yeah,
you talked about starting in small steps. So what do those
yes.
steps look like? How do you build on this? Where do you begin?
Well, so firstly, I would, depends on your business, obviously, and it could be a case of you start with maybe it's a party business, maybe it's a product line, maybe if you have various catalogs, you start with one catalog. Depends on, every business is structured differently, but I'd start there. Or you might just go, you know what, I'm just going to start with product data connection and automation. You don't
Okay.
have to do all the bells and whistles. You don't need all the augmentation, all that jazz. You just go, I'm just going to connect up my suppliers, start there, right? Get all my suppliers automating their product data in HivePix and over to me, so that it makes all of that easy. No copy pasting errors, no emails to deal with, manual entry, or the product data is empty, or I don't have the warranty attachment, or I don't have the product data safety sheet, and then you go chasing, and that's so you get rid of all of that. That's a simple, I think, an easier place to start. But I would always recommend thinking about, well, where's a pain point in your business? What's a problem you want to solve?
Mm.
I mean, beyond, there's always going to be a good business case for cost out, automation, that sort of things. But it's great when you actually have a specific problem, and then you go, okay, well, maybe I'll use HivePix to solve for that specific problem. And in the case of steel components manufacturing, they had a very specific problem where they had defective pallets constantly coming in that was costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they were like, we're going to use the supply chain visibility to solve for that specific problem in the first instance. And then all of a sudden, a world of possibility opened up to them, and they started to solve for other problems. But so I would say with the knowledge of what it can do around connection and augmentation, typically there will be an issue uh, uh, in the organization where there's more of a burning platform.
Got it. Thanks. Amy Hendrick we were with her last week in DC. Hi,
Yes.
Amy.
Hi,
She
Amy.
has a question. How does HivePix aggregate data for common parts and components that are easily swappable with comparable parts? For example, if I see that one electronics component I usually buy through source A has suddenly been purchased en masse by a big box brand, can HivePix, your AI, provide substitution suggestions?
Yes, absolutely. So that is a use case where you can hop onto HivePix and search, but your search would be, okay, these are the specs that it needs to meet, right? And then it'll go out and search certain supplier, a network of suppliers, and it will come back and say, these are all the products that meet the specific specs that you've put in that you want to search for. Absolutely. To do that, ideally, you would have already built out your supplier network, so you have access to that data.
Yeah.
If you're not connected into your supply network, there is an option to, it's like more sophisticated data scraping with AI, right? For external and publicly available data. So it will and can also do that, particularly if you specify your sources, and so it will help automate that process.
And she
So
adds,
that's helpful.
based on a customized supply network built from a costed bill of material, I assume. So you've got all the information about, what that network is, and
Mhm.
what the bill of material is.
Mhm.
You have to have that information in order for the AI to actually find the part that you're looking for somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to know what you're looking for. You need to tell the AI specifically the specs that you're looking for. Absolutely. And the more specific, the better, of course, because then it won't come back with, you know, everything.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
if, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Claudine, I don't have any other questions. Is there something I should have asked you that you would be able to that you would recommend the audience knows before we say goodbye?
Oh, we've touched on a lot of great things, I have to say, but look, I'm absolutely open to other conversations. If you want a chat, an exploratory chat about your business, about competitiveness and resilience, and how HivePix might be able to help you there, I'm absolutely open to a chat. My contact details are on the screen, and if for whatever reason you lose that, you can always contact Pete. I'm sure Pete, you can.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
like I said, we'll be sending out this presentation afterwards, so everyone will have that
yeah,
contact information. So
excellent. I'm also a member of the AAMA, so
yes,
I'll
you
be hanging
are.
around. I'll
Yeah,
so I'll be,
we'll
I'll
see
be
you at other
I'll see
places
you
along
around.
the way, I hope, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So, yeah, just give me a buzz. I'm more than happy to have a chat. And even if it's sort of a bigger, broader chat about competitiveness, I mean, HivePix or no HivePix, I mean, I know HivePix is going to play a big role because there's a big gap in the market, but I'm passionate about the topic as well. So just happy to engage more broadly.
Well, fantastic, Claudine. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your membership.
Thank you for
And thank
having
you.
me. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
thanks for
been
sharing this
great.
information with us. It was lovely having you last week in DC. We covered a lot of ground. You learned a little bit about baseball you might not have known before.
I did. I did. It was great fun. It
Yeah.
was really good fun. And the congressional baseball match is certainly an experience that I don't know if everyone experiences that, I have to say. So that was fun. It was good.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah. Yeah.
intersection of politics and sport.
There you go. All right. Well, listen, everyone, thank you very much for taking your time today to join us for this webinar. And stay posted. Future AAMA Member Connect webinars will be announced as we move forward. So hope the rest of you have a really wonderful day and a great week. And until next time, we're saying goodbye.
Thank you.
You bet.